Well, it's a new year, and with a new year comes new movies for us to talk about on Movie Tales, where we can also wear our Galactic Tales merch. Isn't that amazing? Awesome stuff. It's 2023, folks. The new year is upon us, which means we got a whole new year of movies we can talk about on this. But before that, I wanted to do a New Year's special, like a series of movies, just group some together that I want to talk about because they matter to me, and I think it's just really fun to experience film this way. So we're talking about two very important movies in some aspects. Neither of them were financial successes. The thing about these movies, though, is they are kind of like the forefathers of what came after it. You pretty much don't get modern science fiction without the one movie. You pretty much don't get Star Wars or big space epics without the other. We, of course, are talking about Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets and Disney's John Carter. Two films about classic science fiction stories that inspire everything that comes before it, that don't do well at the box office. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, of course. The problem with both of those movies is the generation that this was aimed for grew up with a bunch of other movies that emulated what they were doing before it was done. So when you are making a Valerian movie in 2017, you have new Star Wars, you have Marvel, you have all these other things already succeeding. An audience isn't going to care. When you were in the early 2010s and you have John Carter, well, we've seen every movie be made that John Carter inspired. So you're not doing anything new. The thing about both these movies, though, and I want to make this abundantly clear to everyone listening, they're awesome. I love both these movies. They're not perfect, we'll get into it, but I think they are both really fun, really engaging, and make me happy. So, let's start with Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Arguably, one of the most complicated movies to talk about when you talk about science fiction. I know that's like a really weird thing to say, but getting into this one is kind of an intense problem because it's like, okay, Luc Besson's kind of weird. The movie is based off like a French comic book that ran for decades. You have controversial leads in it today. How do you get into this movie? And how do I say that I like it so much? It's weird. And to me, one of the biggest problems the Valerian movie has is this isn't a movie made for an American audience. I know that's very weird to say, and it kind of hurts because, yes, foreign films can, like, move over, become big staples, but you have Besson, who is a director with an image. That image doesn't work in 2010, and, like, the filmmaking techniques he uses don't feel like they are always going to appeal to a wider audience. It's so specific, and that can drive some people away from the actual property, and I think that was the case with Valerian. It's like, okay, this is based off a comic book I never heard of, with a director I don't really like, who's made very controversial things. The movie's really weirdly written and structured, and it doesn't set itself up to be like a really good narrative flow. But saying all that, every time I watch this movie, and I've seen this movie a lot, I think I've seen it more in theaters than anybody alive. I've seen it 4 times in theaters. I did a back-to-back when it came out. I really like this movie. I think it's just good. It's interesting. It's creative. It's trying to be like this expansive universe on a tight budget, giving you all this stuff. It's giving you a bunch of like narratives that we've seen inside of other Valerian comic books. And it's like right at the cusp when we're not making these anymore. Valerian is kind of like the last gasp of like, oh, we're going to make a zany blockbuster that's going to be very specific and not for everyone. When that's done, we don't make them anymore because they all bomb, and that's why we get formulaic shit like we have today. The thing is, though, like, you watching this movie, you really see what makes this franchise the thing that everyone is inspired by. Like, you get the homages to Star Wars that are in there. You feel it all coming out perfectly. So Valerian is actually a character in this universe. The comic book is Valerian and Laureline, but you know, I guess Valerian's just an easier sell. And we have Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, two actors who are very interesting for a role like this. Dane DeHaan always seems like he's being primed up to be a lead in a movie like this. Cara makes sense. Now here's the part where it's going to be very controversial is their acting. In particular, Dane DeHaan is given like tasked with doing a certain voice that feels very like deathly and stoic, and there's no expression to it, but that's what he's trying to do. That is what he's being directed to do. It's like, hey, have no emotion, but still try to play yourself off as like this bachelor carefree guy trying to get with Laureline at every scene. And that is it. Like, Kara is doing fine with what she is given. I'm always mixed on her as an actor because she can either give you something great or something very bad. In this movie, I really like her. I like their outfits. I like when we first meet them on the beach. It's very fun. I like when they're wearing their big space mech suits. It's very cool. When they go to Big Market and they're just wearing like hipster clothing, I love it. It's great. They're special agents working for the Galactic, whatever, you get it. And they're just going about their day doing missions. And you're like, this is awesome. I love, like, this is the stuff I like. We have, like, a huge spaceship with 1,000 planets. There's, like, 5 million species on it. There's literally, like, aquatic water bases and gaseous spaces. Just people living in, like, this symbiotic relationship on this big thing, hurtling through space that's just growing as a collective. I'm like, that is so cool. That is awesome. And you're telling me maybe the humans aren't the good guys? I'm like, no shit. Of course we're the bad guys. I like it because the movie starts, it's, like the ground control to Major Tom song, and we're seeing the evolution of the International Space Station throughout time. It's growing, it's growing, it's growing, and then boom, we have aliens aboard, and then boom, humans become the galactic law, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense because we're assholes, and we would do that, wouldn't we? That's all great. And I also, like, the things that make you go, oh yeah, this is not going to be a movie for every person, are just, like, the weird way it does alien stuff. We've seen other alien movies where it, like, makes sense. Like, they just look different. They don't use weird stuff. When we are introduced to the planet Mull in this movie, it's these kind of just, like, anamorphic, white-skinned creatures who have this, like, perfect society in this paradise. They feed a pearl to like this weird dog thing. It starts to shake and it multiplies pearls that they spin out, and they put down like a tube, and then they take one of the pearls from the tube and they give it to like a volcano, and like it feeds the planet. And you're like, that is so specific and very science fiction, and like not like a big galactic Dune kind of way, just like, this is so weird. Who is that for? Or it's like, hey, we have to go hunt a whale in the ocean that has a specific jellyfish on it that bonds to you. And then when you put it on your head, it could try to kill you, but it's going to give you the memories of the person you're thinking about so you can see where they end up. And you're like, what? Okay. Again, I love that stuff because it's just like, we're not doing that enough. Like, we're not getting like, this is a specific creature we need. We're going to have like 3 little dwarven freaks walk up like, well, actually what you need is to go here and get this, but we're going to have to pay you for it. And it's like, I love that. That is so cool and fun and specific and dumb. It's awesome. And that's the stuff I like. Like, these alien designs are just so over the top. I love that every single gun a species uses does something different. Like, there's one that shoots metal balls. There's a kid that's got like a ping pong gun. There's one that just shoots goo and it encapsulates you in goo. And I'm like, that's cool. I want more of that. Give me some goo stuff. It's sick. And then they go to a place called Big Market, which is just like a desert holographic market in another dimension. And you can like put a device on your arm that goes in between the dimensions so you can get things in real life and bring them back. And you're like, that is so cool and dumb. Why don't people like this? And I'm like, it's just cool. Like a big chase sequence. You're falling down a bunch of flights of stairs. You know how cool it is? You know how cool it is when we get like the shot of Valerian in his big suit running straight through the target, going through all the different like cities inside the big planet spaceship. That's so cool. Like, that is such a awesome detail to see. It just makes for something completely unique and fun. I love every second of that. And I know DeHaan, Delavigne don't have the best connection, and maybe their acting's a little stiff, but that's what they're being told to do. And I do think their flirtation kind of works, where she clearly likes him throughout the entire piece, but she's also like, come on. You're going to have to do better than just like being your casual whatever you are to actually get with me and like love me. I'm not going to fall for that shit. And he does learn a lesson in the end about sacrificing for the greater good. He does. He learns a lesson. Kara is kind of the one that already has the lesson figured out because of course she does. I like her. I think she is given some weird roles and has done some weird stuff every now and then. But she works for a science fiction property like this, where it's like, what if we just like put her in a big hat and like someone's gonna try to eat her head? Like, I get that. I think that works fine. It's very cool. Man, they're just doing so much. Like, okay, so the big market stuff's like our first big action sequence, and then boom, we get back, and then it's like, oh, actually, these creatures from mold that are like want the device that we had to get at big market. We have to chase them down. Then we get a big spaceship scene, and we're like, okay, that's another one. Then we put the jellyfish on her head, and you're like, okay, this is where Valerian went. Now we have to go find him, and then he finds us. Then we get kidnapped by fishing people with butterflies on hooks, and we get captured by them. And then it's like, oh, I need to get a clamopod who can pretend to be one of the creatures we have to infiltrate to get Laureline. So this is where Rihanna comes in. And you're like, oh yeah, okay. Weakest part of the movie, in my opinion. Not a necessary scene, but come on. You have Ethan Hawke like, hey, I'm like a weird space pimp, cowboy son of a bitch. You want to see something sexy? Look at my Rihanna fish. And you go into, we literally stopped the movie dead in its tracks for like 5 minutes, and Rihanna does like a sexy number where she's like cabaret. She is dressed up in tribal outfits. She's a cowboy. She's skipping rope in one of them. And you're like, this is sexy and hot, but what the fuck are we doing right now? Can't we like get back to the actual story? And then we do, and then we get a big fight with the people that captured Laureline, and then they die, and then Bubbles dies. That's Rihanna. She dies. Big, like the blood is really, like all of the action looks really fun, but that's not where the story ends. We have to go save the moles, and we go do that because Clive Owen's evil, because he was like, I'm gonna protect humanity because we're the number one in the world. And he's got big robots called K-Trons, and you're like, okay, so we did about 5 big action sequences, have met about 100 different species, have done so many separate stories that could work better, and we're still going to do this plot, and we are going to like get Mull, and we're going to make them better, and everyone's going to be happy, and it works, and we stop Clive Owen. You're like, damn, son, we're really going for this. Like, it's so ambitious and it's so much going on, but the visual effects are fine for 2017. The writing is iffy, but again, it's like that French stylistic choice where it's like, this is how we present it. You know, if this was a strictly American production with no other like attachments to source material from another country, it would be written differently. But just knowing where it comes from, it's doing a good job of presenting what it is saying. And I do like that a lot. Rutger Hauer makes an appearance as the president of the world. For some reason, he shows up for a couple seconds, and I'm like, yes, I like that. The costumes are great. The practical effects are great. Big budgeted science fiction property that we haven't attempted yet, and it worked well, but audiences didn't like it. And I know why. I can understand why. It's hard to do this much all at once and have everybody care about everything going on. And when you are given such an interesting performance from Dane DeHaan in particular, it's very hard to pinpoint that as like a lead character. But I love every second of this. I will defend this movie forever. It is trying to do something we don't do after it. I appreciate that. So many great sequences. I just love I really like the introduction to Valerian and Laureline in this movie. I think just them on the beach, he's trying to be flirty, they're getting a little like fun together, and then just snaps back like, okay, we're on a mission, let's go do it. I like that. I think it's a great introduction to that world. It is kind of feisty in that way. Works great. The stuff that doesn't work great, well, you know, the CG sometimes doesn't hold up, and the Rihanna plot's a little bit weird, but come on. Who doesn't want to put a big jellyfish on their head because some squid-feathered freaks show up to tell you to do it? It's awesome. It's awesome. And Valerian is a strong movie with a lot of cool characters. Really dig it. Check it out. But you know what else is a really good movie? Is John Carter. This is from 2012, right in the era where Disney's like, we have to make stuff for boys. So we're going to try The Lone Ranger. We're going to try doing Tron again. We're going to try, I think there was like another one in the mix there, but they also did John Carter, a property they bought. Andrew Stanton directed this, who did a lot of like the stuff for Pixar. Live action movie based on one of the original science fiction stories from Edgar Rice Burroughs. I watched it the other night. I still think it's good. I still love it. Like, not as weird as Valerian, but it's still a really fun movie. The characters are cool, the graphics are fun. It looks like a Frazetta piece of art in a lot of instances. We'll get into it, but this movie opens up kind of weird where Edgar Rice Burroughs is a character in it and he is given like a letter from his uncle like, "Hey, come see me. Uncle's dead. I'm going to have a book for you to read. This is my life story. Here it is." And then we do the John Carter thing. I'm like, that is a very interesting way to start this movie. I don't hate that that's how we're starting it. It's just a very specific way to start this movie. And it's working good. And then it's like, hey, here's Taylor Kitsch. He was the hotness at the time, doing a really good job with what he's given. He's a prospector. He's going to go find some gold. Finds this weird guy that tries to kill him with Bryan Cranston for some reason. Then boom, he's transported to Mars and the movie can unfold. It's that simple. It's 1913 when the first John Carter story comes out. It's that simple. You find a weird amulet, you go to Mars. It's easy. And then what unfolds is very John Carter. Now here's the thing I want to mention before we get into this. When it came to Valerian, I had no previous attachment to that story. I have gone back and seen some of it, and I think it's very cool. John Carter is something that's been in my household for a long time. My grandfather is one of the guys who has gotten me into a lot of like these older niche science fiction things. John Carter was his guy. I've always known about John Carter. I've always known about Barsoom and Dejah Thoris and all of that world. So when this movie came out, I already knew enough about it to understand where we had to go. And I think the movie does a pretty good job of capturing the essence of what those books are. They are like this epic adventure in this new world of these alien species doing like this fun, combative stuff. It captures that well. Taylor Kitsch is doing as best as he can with what he is given. And I think it's a pretty good job that he's doing there. So when he's on Mars, I love that we spend the time to figure out how to jump. Like, yeah, the gravity's different. We have to build that up. It works. He's found by Willem Dafoe, who I forgot was in this, as the Jeddak of the, what are the name of the, I can't remember their names, but you know, like the Martian people with the cool tusk that fight each other. They treat him like a little baby. He builds himself up and they actually realize he's so strong. Well, then we can use him to fight. And that's all cool. I'm like, that's a good story. Fish out of water. Guy comes to a planet. It's really cool. The Mars effects look really good. Yes, they just filmed it in Utah, but it still looks really cool. They do enough to make it different where it's like, oh, that's kind of like aesthetically different in color. The tone's a little off. The design of the aliens, again, it's classic. It looks perfect and really good. Now, I think the biggest like controversy this film could have coming out of it is the presentation of Dejah Thoris. This is a character who, if you read any of the books, is sometimes presented in a certain light. And I get that. She has a lot of her own books separate from the John Carter stuff, so she's allowed to grow and be her own character. Lil Collins, not the choice I would have picked for this. She just might be a little too plain, milquetoast kind of guy, and I get that. It was 2012, we weren't really looking at certain things, but she is given a little bit more than you're thinking. Like, yes, she wears something similar to the classic Dejah Thoris attire, which is not a lot of attire, but she's also like, she doesn't want to get married to this guy, and like, that's a simple story. We've seen that a million times. There's nothing wrong with that. She's kind of like a scientific advisor on Barsoom in Helium, and she's like, okay, I like that. Okay, she can play that up. She can figure out some things, give them an alternative energy source, but it's like, no, you have to marry this guy because then it's going to bring the planet together. Okay, she's literally working on something that could stop that from happening, so let her do that. Maybe it works well. I think it's great, and she reasonably falls in love with John Carter. Again, it's kind of forced, but you get it. He's like a guy that isn't like, okay, I don't want to marry you because it's going to align the planet. You're hot. Look at us figure this shit out. I'm not from here. Let's just get this going, okay? Like, let's solve the day. It's working well. The thing is, like, it's right in that era, again, where action blockbusters are becoming the big thing. I think this movie has some really, really incredible action in it. It looks so good. Some specific moments I really like. I really enjoy like the first attack where Deja tries to escape her husband's thrall and John comes in to save her, and then he just like destroys some of the ships. Everyone's fighting each other, taking each other down. That looked really cool. I love the sequence when Carter is like attacked by another type of like the Martians that are trying to kill him, and it looks like a Frazetta painting where it's just this guy going ballistic with his dog, fighting a bunch of creatures, just slashing them, killing them all until he's like the last thing standing. That looked so good when he's just going through the emotion of like, I lost my wife and I lost my daughter. I need to let this anger out because I've been escaping it my whole life. I have to feel it now. I'm going to feel it here. Oh, it is so powerful. I do like the fight in the gladiatorial pit. I love a good pit. You know, like it's been played to death. John Carter was doing it first, if we're being realistic here. A good pit sequence is awesome. John Carter has a good one where everyone's just like, okay, let's send out two big apes and see how he does. And he does win. And then he kills the leader. And you're like, okay, he's starting a revolution. Okay, movies are freaking sweet. Like, what else do you really need? Honestly, like it's John Carter. You understand the specifics. I don't understand why this bombed. I really don't. Like it's hitting all the beats that this type of story needs to. It's very weird that nobody like connected with it in that way. I don't understand that. Is it because like the Martians look kind of silly sometimes? It doesn't look any worse than anything else we've seen in that era. So Zola is definitely the one that was given the most detail, I guess because of like the burns in her skin and the way that she's able to portray her physicality throughout most of the film. It does look really good. The costuming, again, it's very classic. It is very the early Burroughs stuff. We're looking at like these perfect line works and details, but everyone's also like shirtless and showing some nipple, and everyone's just like got their legs and their thighs shown. It's like, this is what you want. They're doing it. They're doing the thing that is John Carter. And when you're a young person, you don't know that. I understand that. Again, me being a young guy and knowing about the world of Barsoom is not a normal thing. So I knew what that was, but if I'm talking to like my friends, do you think they've read a Deja Thoris book? Probably not. So I understand why it bombed. I don't understand why it bombed, if that makes sense. Because it's like a perfect combination of everything. Like you got aliens fighting each other on big ships that look like they're from Jabba's palace. You're trying to stop a wedding, Shrek style, where he's just barging in, taking names. Everyone's got into a fight. You have weird blue technology from the Therns where it's like we can shapeshift and give control of this weird gooey device that just shoots people ambiguously to do whatever. It's like, it looks cool. It's well done. Ciarán Hinds is in this for some reason as the dad, and you always forget that this guy is just a good actor. Just like, you have to marry him. I have nothing else to do. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I am trying. And it's such a good way. He's like, I don't want this for my daughter. This guy, Mr. John Carter, he seems like a decent bloke. Screw it. You want to marry him? Go ahead. Okay, this guy tried to kill us. Let's get out of this. So many big action sequences, so many just perfect painted moments that look like they're classic science fiction artwork. This movie just gets it right. You know, it understands like, okay, it's a hard concept, kind of. The guy can travel between two worlds. Let's take a minute and explain that to you. It's a telegraph. And you're like, oh man, it's making a copy of him so his body on Earth is still dead. So when he comes back after like a long time of being there and he awakens in the cave where he first fell through, his body and his bones have to like crack back awake. That is such a specific detail I love. I adore that detail so much that his body is just like barely hanging on, but it's not dead. It's in like this weird state of just like arrested development. What a niche, dumb, cool, sick thing it did. This movie, it just made me smile. And I know it's silly and it doesn't hold up perfectly, but come on. Fish out of water comes to this planet, is treated as a baby, learns he is valuable, tries to help a princess, and, you know, suddenly he's just like avenging the world, leading a war, taking names, kicking ass. It's Star Wars. It is Star Wars, you know? It's everything like that. It's got the Dune vibes too. You definitely feel like, hey, we're on a big sandy planet where there's a bunch of rocks and look at these freaks just fighting for this one thing. It's like the planet. It's kind of cool. I do like the sequences where it's like in the river because the water, it looks really nice. Again, of course, there's no water on Mars, right? You know, it's kind of cool. And they're just like, okay, why are you talking about the water? We don't have water. It's cool. I want more of this, if that makes sense. I've always wanted another John Carter thing to exist. Even a Deja Thoris like Disney Plus series, I think could work if they still have the rights to that universe. But it bombed so hard, we may never attempt to do this again. But it's like, why not? No, it's the plot of just everything you've seen. Here's the guy that comes in. He leads a rebellion, takes down the bad guys, gets to marry the princess. And then he's like, hey, nephew, all of that is true. People, by the time you're reading the book I wrote for you, somebody might be plotting to kill me. Go outside and check. That is so cool. It's so specifically dumb, but I love that where it's like, hey, nephew, I could be dead now. Please go make sure I'm not dead right now. Oh, it's great. John Carter is great. The acting, it's fine. The romance, it's fine. But the graphics and the story and the way, like, so many just beautiful still images are awesome. I want this, man. Like, this is the science fiction stuff I like, where it's just so classic and it feels old school and has so much just like interesting developments that could go on through it, and all the sets look beautiful, and Mark Strong appears in it for some reason. Remember that Mark Strong era where he's just like, I will do every supporting role I get because I am so distinctive in my face, you're going to know it's me, and I'm great at doing that. Because you could easily see how him and Willem Dafoe could have switched roles in this, and then we'd have Mark Strong as like the Jedak, and his daughter would be Sola and all that, and then Willem Dafoe would be like the third, who's like, yeah, I'm a creepy son of a bitch. I love that Dafoe's like, I'm going to be the four-armed freak. That's me. And we're going to learn to fly and get on ships, and we're going to shoot people down. We're all going to have a great freaking time. Everyone's going to love us for this. How cool is the world? How cool is society? John Carter. Great movie. Great movie. I love both of these movies a lot. I know they bombed. I know they're not for everyone, but this is my type of science fiction. Classic, weird, strangely romantic in all the wrong ways, but feels so right at the time. Just awesome designs for animals and creatures in a world you don't understand. Just having it feel like it's from a time before we had Star Wars, and that's what I like to see. The fact that they set the Earth stuff in the 1800s and didn't modernize it, that's impressive to me. That is impressive to me. So if I had to pick one out of the two of these I recommend to watch, John Carter's an easier, like, watch, I guess, but Valerian, I think, has better, like, visual effects. Both movies are awesome, and I highly recommend watching them in the context of, like, if this existed when nothing else did, if we didn't have Marvel or Star Wars or Star Trek or any of these bigger science fiction properties, and you just had these, our worldview would look very different in terms of what science fiction could be on film. That's the context I want you to see these in, and just understand we have two actors in Dahan and in Kitsch who we tried to make something, we didn't make it work. But come on, we could try both of these again and maybe get something good. I like both of these movies, but I think we could try again, maybe get a little bit better. So that is going to do it for this New Year's special of Galactic Tales. No, thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Hive, and I will catch you in the next one. Have fun, stay safe, good luck.